Good afternoon, coaches, and thank you for tuning in to our live chat today. I'm Monique Bowman, NSCA Communications Manager and today's moderator. We're back with MLS Medical Coordinator, Dr. John Gallucci. Hello.
How are you guys doing today?
Good, good. And if you don't know, we're in the middle of a three-part series. This is the second piece of that series. And today we're talking about what coaches can do or learn about performance, athlete performance, and how to communicate that information, as well as how to work with parents to kind of monitor your athletes. Just as a reminder, if you have questions during our conversation, please feel free to send them in. Please tag them with the hashtag NSCA Philly, which is our official hashtag for our convention. And then you can also email them to marketing@nscaa.com, and we'll do our best to address them on air. So for those who missed the last hangout with you, Dr. Gallucci, would you give us a brief description of the whole rest-to-work ratio concept, and why is that important for coaches to understand?
Sure. So basically last time what we did was we outlined the concept of work-to-rest ratio. And it's really been something that when we did the overview last time that we discussed was a component of interval training, and really understanding that we're dealing with soccer players, and soccer players work both aerobically and anaerobically, and really how to train them and at what levels. Now, we did get a little in-depth last time talking about different levels of ages, and we talked about the 6 to 12-year-old, the 12 to 16, and the 16 to 18-year-old, or the 16 to 21-year-old soccer athlete. But basically what we did was we defined an understanding of really understanding that when you're training aerobic, there needs to be a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1 split of a work-to-rest ratio. And when you're dealing with an anaerobic training, you want to really have that rest ratio a little bit longer, where it's more of a 1-to-5 versus the aerobic. And really understanding the correlation of the ratio breakdown to make sure that your athletes are truly getting the top benefit of both methods of training. We did last time talk in depth in reference to the different ages. In fact, there was a question in reference to practices and how to break down practices, especially we had this 6 to 12-year-old component. And studies have shown us out of Michigan State and out of different academies throughout the world have showed us that if you're really dealing with the 6 to 12-year-old soccer athlete, a good streamlined hour and 15-minute training with some good education in the beginning, about 20 minutes of education, heavily weighted in the beginning, and then going into actual understanding the game, the play of game. When you look at this interval training, the work-to-rest ratio, you're really looking at more of the 12 to above, those types of athletes. So it's important for us to understand that.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And for those who may have missed the last hangout, we will make sure to link that on nsca.com/live, and then you can also find it on our YouTube channel as well. So getting to today's topic, would you provide our viewers an idea of how to explain not only this concept, but the concept of just performance and training, and essentially what coaches need to understand themselves in order to explain the concept to parents?
Sure. Well, as the medical coordinator of Major League Soccer and also owning my own private business, JAG Physical Therapy, up in New York and New Jersey, I speak to parents and coaches all day long in reference to what is the right thing to do to keep the child from getting injured. What is the best opportunity to keep the child or the soccer player on the field? And luckily enough, in our career, we've been able to basically deal with, we've been able to deal with children, again, from really 10, 11 years old. And as you know, I take care of professional athletes. I actually deal with a couple of different leagues, not just Major League Soccer. I just happen to be their medical coordinator. And the biggest thing that coaches really have to understand is understanding that you can't train an entire team without knowing each individual's baseline. So it's important that coaches, especially with the 14 and up age, understand a component that not everybody trains the same. Not everybody has the same flexibility. Not everybody has the same endurance. Not everybody has the same body makeup. So athletes really need to be identified as individuals. And as you really start to get to the higher levels, especially above your 16 when you start talking about high-level clubs, academy teams, semi-pro, college teams, and now, as you know, we have the NASL, the USL, Major League Soccer, and the league. It's important, as you know, in college and those above leagues, there's a full-time strength and conditioning coach or performance coach that's with these players. Well, we don't have that in the academy level and the recreation. Usually they're utilizing guys like me with corporations. And what we try to do with our coaches is actually teach them functional movement screens for their athletes and have someone come in and do a functional movement screen to really see what the athlete, the soccer players, are at risk of injury. And the best way to do that with the parents is tell them, our goal as the coach is to keep your soccer player, your child, as healthy as possible. And what we're going to do in the first practice of the year is we're going to put each child through this functional movement screen, which will take about 20 to 30 minutes each. We're going to give that soccer player tips on what they need to work on, with flexibility, what they need to strength, with balance, things like that. And basically then you follow up with the coach with different exercises that the whole team could be doing as well. And then what you actually end up doing is you end up keeping the athletes on the field and out of the locker room or the training room or the doctor's office, the emergency room. And that's our ultimate goal. We want to train as coaches. We want to train kids. We want to teach kids. And if we go into the higher levels, we want to be able to compete with all our athletes on the field. And the only way we can compete with all our athletes on the field is making sure we're training appropriately, making sure we're training safely, and making sure we're looking at each person as an individual and keeping them safe and on the field. So that's how you wrap the parents in. The best way to get the parents involved is talk about their children's safety. You know, a few years back, a couple of my colleagues did some great research, especially when it came to female soccer players in reference to preventing ACLs. Well, as we know, any trauma can happen on the field. So to say you can prevent an ACL is difficult. Can you decrease the incidence of an anterior cruciate ligament tear in female athletes? Absolutely. There's a lot of great programs out there. Here in New York, New Jersey, in my company, we use the LESS program, which is a lower extremity strengthening system, which can be found in my book as well. But needless to say, the component of anything you can do to prevent an injury to keep these athletes on the field is what we as coaches in the medical community, along with the parents, have to teach them. If you remember at our last webinar, we talked about a great company that just came out called At Peak. At Peak is basically an opportunity for coaches to be able to communicate with their athletes and communicate when you're not seeing them. So if you're a coach that sees your athletes twice a week, 3 times a week, and then, of course, the Saturday or Sunday games, how about having the opportunity to have the kids doing some sort of strengthening, some sort of fitness while you're not with them? And basically, At Peak, the application has given us the opportunity to be able to talk to the athletes that we coach and we take care of throughout the entire week. It could be a 15, 20-minute nutrition concept video the application can have. It could be a prevention of injury. But coaches actually get to go in and select exercises and be able to give their athletes each and every day, the days that the coaches are not seeing their players, give them individualized programs that they do 20, 30 minutes every day. So you as the coach know that your athletes just aren't sitting on a couch drinking a can of soda and eating chips. You know, soccer is a movement sport. The more conditioned you are, the less prone you are to get an injury. So with programs like the application At Peak coming out, I think is huge. I mean, again, we're going to talk about my book later. Anything we can do to give education to the parents, the coaches, and the players to keep them safe is the most important thing. And that's why we're doing these webinars, and the 2 programs I'm doing in Philly I'm very excited about.
Okay. Now, how can coaches, I guess, partner with parents? So, you know, you mentioned like the training session at the beginning of the season earlier. You know, what can parents do at home, or what can coaches kind of tell parents to do at home or monitor? I mean, is that a part of this?
That's a great, great question. Here at JAG Physical Therapy, the company I own, as I said, we have 10 facilities in 10 differently diverse communities. And what we've been able to do is we take care of probably close to 100 athletic clubs, and probably out of those 100 athletic clubs, about 60 are soccer clubs. And what we've been able to do, what we've been able to do is actually get the directors to put together a parent soccer player meeting, usually within the first month of their season or whatever part of their season they're in. We pick a night. And some of these clubs have put 400 or 500 people in a room, and we go in there and we talk for a good hour and a half to everybody, keep the kids involved, we keep the parents involved, we talk about the most common soccer injuries, how to prevent them, but we also talk about nutrition tips, hydration tips, and what we're able to do is then you actually now have the parent invested into this concept that the club is really taking care of their child. And what you start to get is you get a tremendous amount of emails, follow-ups, the coaches get involved. And then what happens, I mean, a perfect example is last week, and it was a hockey club that we deal with, actually reached out for our nutritionist that is going to sit in front of 30 athletes and their parents and do an hour lecture on nutrition of an athlete between 14 to 16 years old. So once you give the parents that one taste that you as the club or the academy really have this interest in the child's welfare or the player's welfare, basically the parents buy in unbelievably so. And now what it actually has happened is you see fundraisers on prevention of injury going on in different clubs. I mean, there was one club that used my book this year as a fundraiser. They sold over 1,800 books, and the concept of the fundraiser was keep children on the soccer field and out of the emergency room. So it's amazing how much you get parents to buy in when you talk about keeping them on the field and out of the emergency room.
Absolutely. We all want to keep our players healthy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So for soccer players, we'll go the wide spectrum of ages. What are some of the common injuries that you see, and then are there any warning signs for any of them?
So, it's interesting you say that. When we look at the 6 to 12-year-old grouping, you usually have what's known as your growth spurt injuries, and coaches get so frustrated with growth spurt injuries. And what is a growth spurt injury? You guys have all heard my heel hurts, my knee hurts. Well, my heel hurts, my knee hurts is usually mean that it's Osgood-Schlatter's disease or Sever's disease, which really are the same exact thing, except Osgood-Schlatter's happens at the knee, Sever's disease happens down at the heel and the Achilles. And what happens is the shaft of your bone grows quicker than the tendon. And basically the tendon now pulls on the bone, causes inflammation at what we call the apophyseal plate, which is the attachment of where the tendon attaches to the bone. And as that swells and it becomes tight, the athlete starts to complain. So probably the two most injuries that you get from the 6 to 12-year-olds are those injuries. We call them growth spurt injuries. Now when you jump to your 12 to 16 or your 12 to 17, it absolutely amazes me that, again, we talked earlier today about work-to-rest ratio. We talk about concepts of warm-up, concepts of conditioning, concepts of flexibility, concepts of strength, but yet we keep making the same mistakes and causing overuse injuries. I know we have close to, 200 or 300 coaches on the line, and if I could do anything with the coaches, you guys have to understand, especially if you're dealing with high school athletes, physiologically the body takes 6 weeks for muscle to get a result from any type of exercise. So how is it possible 3 days before school starts, you're going to do 2-a-days or 3-a-days, and you expect that child to be fit within 3 days? And really, it's too much too soon. It causes tendinitis, it causes stress fractures, and basically in that grouping of age, we see a tremendous amount of overuse injuries, repetitive injuries. So it's important for coaches really to moderate their athletes, especially if you're a high school or college coach. College coaches have the opportunity to give them the big strength and conditioning book and hope they do it during the summer and before they come in. What we don't have is at the high school level, a lot of high schools don't have strength and conditioning coaches and get the big books, but there's so many different avenues out there to teach the kids to how to train appropriately. So when they do come in 3 days before school starts, you can actually work on preparing them to play soccer as opposed to trying to get fit. So that's an important thing that all coaches have to understand, that the body does not rebound quickly, especially in preseason. I mean, we've all been through our preseasons. We all remember going to our coach and our coach saying, all right, we're going to run 1,000,000 sprints today, and then the next day our leg didn't move. Well, that's what
Mhm.
ends up hurting the athletes. That's, it used to be the strong survive, but as we're getting more and more I can't even say it. More as we're getting more and more advanced with our athletic training in soccer, we have to understand that the way we train our kids, our soccer players, has to be a way that's also preventive, keeping them on the field and getting them fit appropriately. And what most coaches don't understand or don't want to get involved in, it's great to run the kid, but what's the soccer player putting in their body? Did you look at the
Mhm.
nutrition? Have you spoken to them? And things like that. So we can have an entire 3-hour webinar on just training, and then we could do another 2 hours on nutrition. But ultimately, there's a lot of great books out there. Nancy Clark's nutrition book for athletes is outstanding. It's one of the best sports nutrition books out there. It really teaches, especially endurance athletes like soccer players, how to eat before a game, after a game. If you have tournament, I mean, it's a really good book. We touch on a little bit in my book, Soccer Injury Prevention and Treatment. There's a lot of good conditioning books out there. So it's really coaches really taking the time to really look at all these different avenues that they can get the parents to buy in on. And I'm going to tell you, parents love a coach that cares about their children. I mean, we've got a club out here that's an academy level club that each one of their coaches has a direct line to my facility director. And the parents are actually given that number, so this way those kids could call immediately, or the parents call immediately if the smallest little injury is coming, is starting to be felt. Now, what we do see, and I missed one grouping of age, that if we look at the 16 to 22-year-old or the 17 to 22-year-old, that's where we see our higher collision injuries. We see our knee and ankle injuries. We see our fractures, our hip injuries, our low back. Again, it's important that when, especially on the boys' side, when you start to play at the junior level of the 18, 19-year-old, everybody is trying to compete at a higher level to get to the next level. It's important that you as the coach make sure that they understand that this is not rugby, it's soccer. And they have to really understand the rules of the game. We covered a game last year that a guy went in on a high kick. The referee, wasn't controlling the game. Kid goes in on a high kick. Ends up, the kick was so high it broke the other kid's jaw. There were
Wow.
two 19-year-olds and one kid's jaw got broken. And literally, when I say a high kick, the kid's foot had to be 5 feet up in the air. So, and again, I
Wow.
mean, those are the simple concepts and simple, again, I know we don't have much time to get in depth on each injury, but again, if we'd ever want to do a specific injury, if anybody ever wanted to write in, I'd be more than happy to talk about anything. I mean, I know a lot of coaches want to know about anterior cruciate ligaments, and I know a tremendous amount of coaches want to know about the soccer hip. So if we would ever want to do anything about the soccer hip, I'd love to get involved in a further webinar on something like that.
Absolutely. We'll definitely keep that in mind and hopefully generate that. I do want to warn our viewers, while this live chat is more so for informational, we are not equipping you to make any type of medical decisions. So we do recommend that you work with your parents to get your athletes to a professional to actually make sure that these injuries are taken care of, or they actually have an injury rather than maybe just need to rest or something like that. So I just want to toss that out there real quick.
That was a great disclaimer.
Yeah, we don't want anyone saying, oh, you're probably a broken ankle, and not the case. So just want to toss that out there. So, how much, this is a little different from the questions I sent you, but how much onus do we put on the players, and how much onus do we put on the coaches, and how much do we put on the parents to make sure that players are healthy? Because we do want to, use sports to create, great characters for, and our athletes, but, let's just go with that. Does that make any sense?
Okay. So it makes sense, and it's a question that's been asked over many, many years. Who's responsible for the athlete? Who's responsible to get the athlete fit? Who's responsible to get the athlete ready to play? Now, again, on this call, on this webinar, we have a whole litany of different level coaches, from youth coaches to club coaches to recreation coaches to high school and college coaches. So again, to be specific to each would be difficult. But again, when we look at the breakdown that Michigan State did a few years back, it was actually pretty interesting that they actually, again, broke down those ages of athletes. And they looked at all athletes, not just soccer players. And really, if you look to the 6 to 12-year-old, the primary responsibility really becomes on the coach to teach the sport. So, fitness at this point is not that important. Parents, I mean, kids are fit all the time under 12 years old. So if we have an issue keeping them fit, then we've got a major issue. Parents are really trying to get their kids involved in athletics. And what we like to see is the coaches be motivating, be educational, keep it fun, keep it social, and really keep the kid involved. So many people, I mean, and again, there was a statistic that 70% of children drop out of organized sport before the age of 13. And the top 3 reasons why they drop out of sport before the age of 13 is coach pressure, parent pressure, and peer pressure. And then the 4th one was, of course, injuries. But so that's an amazing statistic that 70% of all youth athletes drop out of sport before they're 13 years old. I think we really have to take a step back on how soccer is developing in our country. And I think that we need to keep kids involved. And when we're looking at the 6 to 12-year-old component, it's really important to learn the rules of the game. Don't worry about the W's. Really worry about the development of the skills. Worry about the gross and fine motor skills of soccer really being developed well enough, and understanding that the kids finally learn the game. We all know the bumblebee soccer component at 6, 7 years old, but we know as we get to 8, 9 years old, that should be gone, and kids should be learning how to play the field, understanding how the field moves, understanding how to play off of each other. When we go to the 12 to 16-year-old grouping, we really need to say, all right, well, the child has a responsibility now for themselves. The parent has a responsibility of making sure that the child understands the responsibility that they now have on themselves. And then the coach really has to start to implement an understanding of putting fitness into the routine, putting some prevention of injury concepts into the routine. And that's when you also start to do more field position education and really trying to grow the individual into the position that the coach feels that the athlete would succeed most at. Really, and not to go delve back, but when you're looking at 12 and under, we want kids playing all of the field, learning all the positions. So this way, when we do get to the 13 and up, the kids really have an understanding on how to play off of the positions that they learned at those younger ages. And as they start to specialize into their specific thing, they understand what everybody else's duties are. And then again, as we know, when you get to the 12 to 16, you start to get a little bit more competitive. There's a little bit more pressure. We still need to realize we're in a development stage, especially at the 12, 13-year-old. We still need to be developing athletes. We can't be that cutthroat, hey, get it or you don't. And the best person that we can use for that example is really Michael Jordan. He didn't get it at 13, but he sure as hell got it when he was 18. So it's something to understand, that we need to understand that we can't push kids out of a game that's growing so well in America and developing. We may be pushing out the next Pele, the next Landon Donovan. We want to keep kids interested. And then as coaches, when they hit 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, these kids are committed to the game of soccer. They want to be there. They run there. They're begging their parents to be there. They're joining different clubs. They're trying out for academies. They're trying out for ODP. You now have the kid involved. So now when you're talking about 16 to 22, coaches, it's you and the athlete. Parents are great, but it's you and the athlete. You're in charge of developing those kids. You're in charge of helping those kids get the winning edge. You're in charge of making sure those kids understand how to get themselves fit. And really, again, it's funny. So it really goes from the 6 to 12-year-olds, it goes parent coach to really, it goes, and then it goes really coach, it goes coach parent, it goes actually coach, then it goes to 12 years old, it goes coach parent, and then now when you go in 16 and 0, it really becomes coach again. And what you really see with the 16 and up and coaches to help you out, when you look at the 16 and up, most of you now have medical professionals associated with you. So that's who you get to banter off of when it comes to a certain kid's issue or the way they're moving, the way they're not adapting to certain things. It could be a simple biomechanical strengthening issue. All of a sudden, you work with an athletic trainer or a physical therapist for 4 to 6 weeks, and all of a sudden you bring that kid on the field and his first step is better, his mechanics are better. So usually 16 and up coaches are working more and more with the medical professionals and performance professionals. So I definitely think that's the easiest scope that I can give you. And again, I'm putting out a lot of material and speaking quickly because I want to make sure you guys get as much material as possible. So those of you that I'm speaking too quickly for, I apologize.
It's okay. I do want to get to, you mentioned it already, but your book that's out and how that ties in with the NSCAA Foundation.
Okay, well, my book is called Soccer Injury Prevention and Treatment, which is the most common soccer injuries, how to prevent them and how to treat them. It's a 10-chapter book that also has an overview of our LESS program, which basically is decreasing lower extremity injuries from hip injuries to hamstrings, soft tissue, very similar to FIFA 11 and your ACL preventive programs. I basically combined all the research that's been done over the years and basically put it all together in a simplistic, easy-to-follow guide. Yeah, so that's in the book. And then we talk about some nutrition. We talk about hydration and strengthening. And the book really came out great. It's really become a component that we're excited about. More people are buying the hard copy than the video or the tablet copies because people like to keep it with them at all times. Players are keeping it in their lockers. Coaches keep it on their desk. And it's becoming more of a hard copy sell, which is shocking because people like to use it as a reference. You know, I originally was getting it for a read-through, but it's becoming more and more of a reference. And again, it's Soccer Injury Prevention and Treatment by John Gallucci and the Soccer Coaches Foundation. Every book sold through the foundation website, and I believe there's a code on the foundation website. Basically, the foundation gets a donation to the foundation for every book that's sold. So we're very excited about that the National Soccer Coaches Association has endorsed the book and supported it. So we've also got some great support from the Commissioner of Major League Soccer, and also the President of the Federation has supported the book as well. Both of them are quoted in the book, and very excited about it.
And for those of you who may not know what the NSCAA Foundation is, it is a foundation that essentially brings coaching education and courses to underserved or underprivileged areas. So just trying to build up the sport by providing access to the information they need to develop players and build the sport. So we had an email question come in, and this is from Simo Idrisi, and I apologize if I butchered your name. And his question is, what is the toolkit and aid for helping growth injuries? His example is, some coaches are saying to stretch after a warm-up to a kid who has a growth injury. So what is the correct way to educate the player on how to understand and what to do?
Well, the biggest thing that we've found, especially in the physical therapy and athletic training world, is when you're looking at those growth injuries like Sever's disease, which is basically the lengthening of the shin bone and the Achilles, and gastroc, your soleus and gastroc basically don't grow quick enough, and the tendon becomes very taut. Basically, what we want the child doing is doing some sort of flexibility each and every day to just increase the elasticity of that tendon. And the same thing with the knee, with the Osgood Slaughter. Really, it's a strengthening component, and it's also a flexibility component. So what we like to tell all coaches is that your athletes need to warm up at every age. They need to have a sweat broken before you're ready to train them. So you need to understand that there needs to be a component of warm-up where the muscle is warm before it can do the actions of soccer. So usually, if you look at the professional level, you're looking at, before practice starts, a 15 to 20-minute workout. I mean, these guys' heart rates are up. We have a sweat. They're also wearing sweats to get the muscles warm. And basically, a warm muscle is a more elastic muscle. And then they go into their training. Now, when we're dealing with young children, if we divert back to the growth injuries, usually a good 10-minute warm-up is really good with some common body stretches and leg stretches. You don't have to hold for an hour. It's not like you need to do this whole stretching Jack LaLanne program. It's just take your 6 or 7 full body stretches and leg stretches and go through a good protocol, and then go into your practice. Now, a lot of coaches like to end practice, and everybody goes to their cars and goes home. Then they get out of the car, and the kids are a little stiff, and that's when you see the most pain in the heels and the most pain in the knee. Coaches, after practice, take again 10 minutes with a good cool down, and again, holding your stretches a little bit longer. Now, everybody, especially in the running community, likes to say, well, where's the evidence of flexibility? Where's the evidence of stretching? Basically, we've found that if you stretch appropriately, you decrease the incidence of these type injuries. And, pediatricians support the idea. I mean, there's not a pediatrician or a pediatric orthopedic that if a child is diagnosed with Osgood-Schlatter or Sever's disease, that they don't put them into physical therapy for 6 weeks just to get some good muscle strength and flexibility around the joint and make sure the joint is working appropriately. Coaches and parents, as I said, good warm-up, good cool-down, and make sure it's part of your practice each and every day.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that.
No problem.
Now, adding to your already numerous responsibilities, you are also a convention clinician. So could you give us, and you're presenting 2 different sessions, one Thursday, January 15th at 12:45, and then the other on Friday, January 16th at 9 a.m. So could you give us a quick overview of those 2 sessions?
Sure. I'm very excited to come and present to the national soccer coaches down in Philly. Should be a great presentation. I've done it before. I actually just did one with Soccer X out in the Americas in Barbados, and they've actually just invited me to do a very similar presentation at Manchester next year. And basically what we've been able to do is I've basically taken the most common lower extremity injuries, and we talk for a good hour on how to prevent those lower extremity injuries, and that's Thursday's talk, and that's anything from knee injuries to hip injuries to ankle injuries to shin injuries to soft tissue injuries. So you can imagine it's a very comprehensive packed thing for a good 45 minutes to an hour, I believe I'm speaking. Mm-hmm. And then on the Friday, I think it's very important for coaches to really get this education. It's basically a cardiac and concussion update, current trends on what's happening across our country and across the world when it comes to dealing with cardiac and cardiac understanding of testing, and then also a concussion update, what's going on with return to play, what are the signs and symptoms, which many of the coaches have taken, but the return to play has changed a little bit, and it's important for the coaches to understand what the athlete must have before they return to the field. So that's a great thing. And again, what we talk a little bit both with on Friday in the cardiac and concussion is also, we like to use the word mitigating risk and liability to the coach and making sure the coach understands that this athlete's not back on his or her field and unless they're 100% healthy to go and cleared by a medical professional.
Absolutely. We're definitely looking forward to that. And one last question. Is this your first convention experience? And if so, or if not, what are you most looking forward to?
Well, I've been to the Soccer Coaches Convention before. As you know, Major League Soccer does their draft every year in collaboration with the conference. So I've been down there as a Major League Soccer employee. But it's my first time lecturing down there. I'm very excited about it. As I said, I've spoken all over the world to soccer coaches, and to be able to come in and speak at our national convention, I'm very, very pumped and excited about. And I think that we'll see a lot of good information come out in that conference. And ultimately, again, as I always like to say, it's about keeping the players on the field and off of my tables.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Gallucci, thank you again for doing this hangout with us. We really appreciate it. And we have the 3rd part of the series coming up in mid-December, so we'll send that information out when we can, or as the time approaches. So as you know, our convention is coming up in January, and registration is open. Be sure to register soon before December 14th, I believe it is, when registration prices go up. You'll find more information about it and to register at www.nscaa.com/convention. So again, Dr. Gallucci, thanks again, and we'll see you in December and in January. So thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great Thanksgiving next week.
Oh, you too.